In this video, I'm going to be covering the hand positions for kettlebells. So specifically, I'm referring to rack position, goblet position, as well as overhead, because these are going to be critical. And then lastly, I'm going to touch on when we're swinging, where our hands should be. Just some tips and tricks before you get into it that you need to try to master and understand, so that way, as part of your other exercises that you complete, if I refer to goblet position, you know what I'm talking about and you know that you're doing it correctly. So first, the most important one is the rack position. So Josh is going to be going through it today. I've got two different kettlebells here. Both are adjustable kettlebells. This one in particular, Josh, go ahead and pick that one up and go into the rack position. So Josh is in the rack position with his left hand right here. And the one downfall for these particular kettlebells is that they're adjustable and they're hollow when you remove the weights. So while I recommend them, you may want to get yourself some sweatbands, because then you can basically put a cushion by putting it around your wrist underneath that hard part and the forearm. Just a tip when you're getting started with these to avoid any issues with your forearm. Now I'll teach you how to get into this rack position, but the second type of kettlebell that you can use is a competition grade kettlebell or the basic cast iron kettlebells. And for these, if you have one of them, when you go into the rack position, it's not going to hurt as bad because the bell is round and not this slicing thing going against your forearm. So if you're doing a lot of rack position, then obviously you want to make sure you potentially put some sweatbands. Also, if you get super sweaty, then the bell can slip around on your hand. So those are some key considerations I want you to start off with because it can impact your experience working with your kettlebells. Sweatbands, they help cushion your wrists if the bell is resting against it, which it usually is. They also can help prevent any slippery hands if you're a really sweaty individual when you're doing your training. And then between the two types, the ones that are completely round all the way will feel less taxing on the wrist when you're up in the rack position. So let's talk about getting into the rack position now. So now when we're getting into the rack position, what you want to do is just grab the bell towards the edge of the horns. So a lot of people just grab right in the center. We won't want to grab right in the center of the horns. We want to grab across on the edge of the horn, the half horn right here, and basically scoop it up, not put it too deep into the hand. And we're going to internally rotate our thumb in between our legs. And then what we're going to do is we're going to engage our core and our glutes and explode up a little bit. And so quickly, it's going to look like this, and I'll show it slower. You're going to get up into this position and position. Yes, there's a rotation happening. The fist is going to go towards the center of the chest as much as you can. Ladies, sometimes this is challenging, so just do the best you can as far as getting the fist towards your chest, and your elbow is out and it's rested. And from the side, my tail is slightly tucked under because I have a lot of weight up here. Depending on how heavy your kettlebell is, it'll be more tucked or not tucked. This is pretty heavy, and so this is a counterbalance. Make sure you keep a soft bend to the knees. This is the rack position. So when you're getting to it, you pick up the bell, engaging the abs into a proper hip hinge. You're going to swing the thumb internally, and now you're going to pull up and open. So this is the in-between phase that you don't stop at. Up and open those hands. And the webbing of my hand is right in the corner of the bell here. It's right there. And now, when I hike it up, I'm going to spiral my arm. So there's rotation happening of the wrist that you're going through. So you're not death gripping the bell. You're ideally going to want to rest it in a diagonal in your hand. So when you turn and you open up and you look at it for yourself, if you have a mirror, you'll see it as a diagonal cutting across from your thumb, almost parallel with your thumb. So if you got to shift it, feel how it feels to get in your hand properly, you play around with that. Make sure you do both sides. Try both sides. Starting with a nice weight, a nice light weight, really lightweight, like 2 pounds, well, actually not 2 pounds, 5 pounds or so, 8 pound is good. Just really get it down. Get that hand position down and keep that arm close to you. So you don't want it out to the side. What to not do, we don't want to be out here. People hold it out here. It's not technical. It's not technically a proper form, holding it out here. You want it close to the body just because of the biomechanics of the bell itself. You definitely do not want it back here by the head. This is not technically correct either. Just keep it nice close to the chest, tucked in. You don't want it out to the side at all. Keep it in. Almost like you're trying not to drop anything from under your armpit. That should be the feeling. So that's a rack position. Rack position is the most complex. So one of the least complex one is the goblet position. So the goblet position, all we're doing is we're gonna flip the bell upside down, and notice I cup it with my palms like a goblet, where I'm holding it, where the bar is facing me. So the bar is not widthwise. It's a lot easier to hold it this way. This is the goblet position. So you can go ahead and try it if you want. Perfect. So even with the adjustable bell, you can still hold it in this position. It's a little bit different because it's hollow in between, but he can still grip it. Completely fine. Goblet positions will perform a lot of different exercises, including lunges and squats. So let's say you're super exhausted, because this one for me is very, very heavy. So when you're exhausted coming out of it, spiral your hand down if you can, spiral it down, and now lower it to your stomach. Bend your knees, grab the horn, let it flow down against your thighs if you can. Otherwise, just grab it, let it go, hold it, turn it around, and then go down into a hip hinge to lower it. Perfect. All right, now, gripping it with one hand. Gripping it with one hand, we want to make sure that we're holding it towards that front in the crook, just like I said, for getting into the rack position. We're holding it at the edge. So whether it's to the side and we're doing single leg exercises, single leg deadlifts, we're not necessarily always going to be holding it in the center. We're going to be holding it closer towards the edge. So that's completely fine. Does that mean you can never hold it in the center? You can for certain exercises, but in general, most of them for technique purposes are going to be closer to the edge, because then we can go into something like a single leg clean, for example, or eventually snatches and on from there. A double hand hold. You want to grab it by the horns like this. You want to pull it down, break the bell, basically, and this is to activate those shoulders down and back. This is a double hand hold. This is useful in squat positions, lunge positions as well. And then there's also some upright rows with it. It's not too common to do that other than in some boot camps, but that is one of the purposes of the double arm hold as well. Last but not least is the overhead hold. So far I've covered the goblet position, which can be a hand hold position for many different exercises. I've covered the rack position, which is also very critical to master because it's a transition move. It's part of the cleans. It's part of a lot of movements in kettlebell training, that rack position, and you can just hold the kettlebell there for squats and lunges. This last one is an overhead hold. For this one, same idea as the rack. Don't try this if you're not strong yet to do an overhead press itself. But what it will look like if I prescribe it to you is that we're basically trying to get up overhead, over top of our body. And notice my hand is splayed open. I would be holding it like this, but I'm trying to show you that I'm not death gripping it at all. It should be resting in your hand. This is an overhead hold position. You can do lunges in this position. You can do squats in this position. You do a lot in this position, but it's also very important for presses as well. So that's the overhand hold. So those are the hand positions that we do. in kettlebell training. Those are most of them, the most common for those. There are some random ones as well, but in general, that is it. And please follow your exercise prescription as you move forward in the kettlebell training, and make sure that you have mastered these holds, because it will make your training much easier and much more effective. So I hope these tips help you in preparation for your training. Take care.